census conducted once in a decade. So there also we miss some of the items there in government population survey also. So that they apply this principle, that is a census survey. This method is applied there, but there also there is a chance of missing items. And sometimes it is possible to obtain sufficiently accurate results by studying only the part of the total population. So in such cases, there is no utility of the surveys. So why that census, the disadvantages of the census inquiry make us to go for the sampling. So what do you mean by sample? So it is the sample is explained by a great researcher Bradfield et al. He defined sampling as the process of measuring a small portion of something followed by a general statement about the whole thing. So actually research, when you say research, it is nothing but using of common sense. So you yourself, you have to put in that place and you're supposed to involve and observe the things. Then only it will make you the sense, as well as give so much of information about what you're going to inquire. For example, if you're studying about the attrition rate of the store as a customer, so you yourself a customer, imagine you yourself a customer, the store, why you want to turn out from that particular store. So many reasons you can bring up. So that it is very, so research is nothing but common sense, and also it is nothing but a study of variables. And sampling, what is sampling? So actually, as far as I told them, what is the population? What the population in the mathematical terms, if I explain, the population is nothing but, hello?
Yes, ma'am.
It's nothing but, it is a whole set, and sample is the subset of the population. So you pick up some of the units from the population and you try to estimate its characteristics. And when you pick up that sample, so many things you have to look into. It is not that easy, or just you have to carefully apply this procedure. So when you apply that sample study, so what is a sample? It is one portion of something followed by a general statement about the whole thing. So a sample is a collection of individuals selected from the large population. So this visual also clearly explains the sample, which is coded in the red color, yellow color, and there small round is given, that is a subset of the population. Sample is a subset of the population. And really, sample. So in Tamil, the sangadam vadikum bodhu, when you cook rice, no, so you won't test it if you want to the final whether the process has completed, the boiling process is completed. How you check? Your mother will check that. She won't check everything, that the total population, the total rice. So only 2-3 items she will pick out and check whether it is boiled or not. So that is a very good example or very good practical thing which explain what is a sample. So sampling is nothing but if the data you collect really or the same as you get from the rest, then you can draw conclusions from those answers which can relate to the whole group. So this process of selecting just a small group of cases from out of large group is called sampling. So when you pick out the sample, the population characteristics and the sample characteristics should match the variation. So many parameters are there. So whether it is an descriptive statistics or inferential statistics, descriptive statistics, some of the items are the average, variance. So that have to match. It's similar. The characteristics must be similar. Otherwise, so your result will not be appropriate, or it won't be an accurate result. So are you able to follow me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Yeah. So why you go for the sample? So a valid alternative to your sense is a survey of the entire population is impracticable. As I already stated, and budget. So if you take each and every item of the population to inquire or to analyze, then the cost and as well as the money involved is very high. So the budget constraint restricts the data collection. and time involves also will be very large time is involved there, and as well as the results from data collections, or sometimes you need very urgently. In that case, you are supposed to finish the process immediately, or you have to suppose immediately you have to give the information in that case. So you cannot rely on the census survey, you must go for the sample survey. And also that studying the entire population given problem situation is also impossible. Sampling is the important process for the following reasons: economically and accuracy, and save and time efforts, and easily it is approachable. Errors can be controlled here. When you go for the suppose you will miss out. Some of the items can be missed out there, and some of the items cannot represent the population. In that case, the errors can be very high. Then practically it is not at all possible. So this is a visual which explains what is a population and sample, and that stars, no, it's every units of the population. It is called as element or case. So this every the units are called as case or element. So when doing a survey, the question inevitably arises. For example, you are a PhD, you're doing your PhD, or you're submitting any proposal to different funding agency. So in that case, when you are supposed to do a survey in ICSS or on all, so they will ask for what is population, what is sampling unit, what is your sample size. So many factors you are supposed to explain in that particular format itself. So in that case, while doing a survey, you are supposed to answer so many questions are involved there. If your sampling plan, you are not making a sampling plan properly, then definitely you don't end up in accurate information. So it will be the purpose of your research study will not be solved. Then how representative is the sample of the whole population, in other words? So whether you have picked up the sample in a right way, the sample acts as the representative of the whole population. So suppose if you are asking the opinion of the students of a particular course in your college, then they must be the representative. You cannot go and ask the students which they are not related to the particular department. So you have to find out the right student which who will give the right answer, isn't it? So they must be the right representative to give the right opinion about the particular course. So how the representative is the sample of the whole population, in other words, and how similar or characteristics of the small group of cases that are chosen for the survey to those of the whole group. So whether the characteristics of the small group, whether it is statistical characteristics or whether it is matching or not, chosen for those of all of the cases in the whole group. So this you have to check. So what is the population? So population, it doesn't mean a number of people. It is a collective term used to describe the whole total unit of things or a cases. For example, if you want to study the women's status in Tiruvallur district, then the women in the Tiruvallur district is your population, or they to describe the total quantity of things of the type which are the subject of your study. So your population can consist of certain types of objects. Organization population may be objects, but for example, in a manufacturing unit, suppose if you want to test a deficiency item, how many defective items are produced in a particular day or a particular week, then the whole items, the products produced in that particular manufacturing unit becomes your object or its population. Organization, for example, if you're taking one organization, if you're undertaking that particular study, then that organization, the employees in the particular organization, if you're focusing on your study, then the particular employees in the organization becomes the population. then people or even events. Some if you are making Tamil Nadu electoral poll, what will be the result? Sometimes you can see in the channels before that electoral the polling take place. The results they will tell this party will win, that party will win. The whole population that Tamil Nadu people will become the population or even events. You can undertake your study. Okay. Next, sample design. What do you mean by sample design? So sample design is nothing but it's a definite plan for obtaining a sample from a given population. It refers to the technique or the procedure the researcher would adopt in selecting items for the sample. Actually, I'll explain with a simple example. For example, if you want to study about women entrepreneurs in a Vellore district, so that you have to prepare a sample plan for the sample design for that, isn't it? So right type of sampling technique you should apply. I'm not going to that. So how do you pick up that women entrepreneurs? So can I have some answer from you? Are you able to follow me?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you prepare that sample that plan? Women entrepreneurs in Vellore district. Can I have some answers, please? I need some response. First, you have to find out what is the total population of the from the government collectorate or in Tamil Nadu website, whichever is going to give the right population of the women population of the Vellore district. You have to take and different taluks or particular Vellore, how many taluks are there and how many streets. If it is a probability sampling, you have to go by that. Or it's not probability, you can use any type of, whether it is a quota sampling or purposive sampling or whatever it is. You will be going to a probability or non-probability. I'll explain in detail about that. So women population, then women population, how many women entrepreneurs are there? So you have to find out, isn't it? So this is over a taluk. So you have to find out each and every taluk and the street plan, how many entrepreneurs are there. So for you will be going through different sources. So where you can have the right women, you will have the right women population, but how many women entrepreneurs in Vellore district, it will be a big question mark, isn't it? So you will be accessing to the whether it is a MSME or some government organization, you will be approaching or collectorate will be approaching and you will be collecting the information. So where you can find the number of women entrepreneurs in Vellore district, isn't it? Different sources you will refer and you will find out, you will identify that women population. Then you will decide what type of sampling you can apply, isn't it? Whether it is you're going to apply the multi-state sampling or otherwise whether it is quota sample, whether it is convenience probability. I will explain what is probability or non-probability. So usually always go for probability sampling. So that will have more accuracy than the non-probability sampling. If you go for a probability sampling, then applying the parametric test, it will be very easy for you. Okay. It refers to the technique or the procedure the researcher would adapt in selecting the items for the sample. So sample design is nothing but, so it is a technique or procedure what you will apply in selecting the you will be going to different stage, first stage, second stage, third stage, and finally you end up in the right women entrepreneur population. So this is what it's called, the sample design, or it is nothing but a plan you are formulating before entering into the research. Next, steps in sample designs. In the steps in sample design, so what are the steps? You will first you will analyze what is the universe, the type of universe you are undertaken for the study. So that you will decide. The first in developing any sample is clearly define the set of objects. What set of objects you are doing, or who is your respondents. So technically called the universe. For example, in an organization, so you are going to study about some training programs, whether but the training the opinion about the effectiveness of the training programs. So if it is the effectiveness of training program, who will answer these questions? So it must be the employees who are working in the organization have to answer, isn't it? So then they will become, that is the set, the objects. So this is called the universe. So the type of universe has to be defined very well. And the universe, you must identify whether it is finite or unfinite. If it is an organization, you can easily have the how many employees are working in the organization. For example, if you are undertaking the study for the total Tamil Nadu people, it is an electoral poll study. Then it is finite or infinite. So sometimes it will be a finite, or sometimes it becomes an infinite, isn't it? So in that case, you have to decide. So whether it is finite universe or it is an infinite universe, that is very important. Finite means it is countable. Infinite means it is uncountable. Number. In finite universe, the number of items is certain. So you can tell in that particular organization, 7,000 employees are working in the organization. You will go to HR department, you collect their so now all the organization, they are using some software, isn't it? So you can ask how many employees are working. They will give easily the numbers, isn't it? But if it is an infinite, the people who are eating pizzas, so it is, you cannot identify that easily, isn't it? Who are eating pizzas, who are preferring for pizzas. So it is very difficult. So then it becomes an infinite number. So the infinite universe, the number of items is certain, but in case of infinite universe, the number of items is infinite. So we cannot have any idea about the total number of the items. So the population of city, the number of workers in a factory, and or the examples of finite, whereas the number of stars in the skies you cannot count. And listeners of people watching some channels, particularly today, that serials are very, it's a trend. The women are very preferring for that. So you cannot give the right numbers. So you are watching the particular serial, isn't it? So in that case, it is very difficult. Then it becomes an infinite universe.
Just to escape.
Next, sampling unit. So when you define the sampling unit, a decision has to be taken concerning the sampling unit before selecting the sample. So sampling unit may be geographical in nature. For example, if you are want to study about the state, then it becomes the women's status in India. Then it is all the states have to be included in the list, isn't it? Then it is sampling unit will be all the states in India. So sampling unit may be geographical one, such as state, district, village, etc. Or a construction unit such as house, flat, etc. So suppose households. If you want you want to study about preference towards milk. So which brand is preferred more, whether it is Avon, whether it is Heritage, whether it is Arokya milk. Then your sampling unit becomes the households, isn't it? Who are consuming the milk, or sometimes the tea shops, hotels. So that is a different types of setups. If you want to have the preference, so in your thesis itself, you clearly you specify the things. So you want to find out the preference towards the you want to study about the preference towards a brand of milk among the households. Then you will be focused only on the households, isn't it? Then workers will not come under the unit. Then your sampling unit becomes the household. Or suppose if you want to find out the preference towards the women cosmetics, so you have to approach the parlors, otherwise the women population you have to access like that. The researcher will have to decide one or more such unit he has to select for this study. Okay, the sampling unit. For example, if you want to study about some tribal community, you have watched a very good movie that JB, isn't it? So it's the tribal population. If you want to study, so you in Tamil Nadu, then what you will do? So Tamil Nadu, different tribal groups. You will to the government website. You will identify what are the names of the tribal groups and where they lives. Mostly they will be living in hills and very rural areas. Okay, so you will identify the different tribal groups. ஒவ்வொரு இடத்துல இருக்கிறவங்க ஒவ்வொரு குரூப் வந்து பேர் வேற மாதிரி இருக்கும். அந்த லிஸ்ட் வாங்கிப்பீங்க. Then total tribal population ஏதாவது இருக்கா அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு கண்டுபிடிப்பீங்க. Then you will study about the particular unit மட்டும் நீங்க ஒரு particular community மட்டும் எடுக்கிறீங்கன்னா that particular community group only you will take and you will. So, for example, Udila, the Toda group, if you want to study, so you will be studying that particular group population. That becomes your sampling unit. So, this is where you make your sampling plan. And next, coming to the source list. So, source list, it is nothing but it is also known from the sample frame from which samples to be drawn. It contains the names of all items of the universe. In case if it is a finite universe, then it contains, for example, if the employees of the organization, then the employees list you will have, isn't it? So over a particular different categories of employees will be working in the organization. So for example, if it is the class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4 level of employees, and class 1 la evlo per irukanga, different departments you will have, and how many employees it will give the idea. That becomes the source list. For example, your attendance, particular department, MBA department students going to be your sampling unit, then because the attendance becomes the source list which gives the number. Okay, so the size when you talk about sometimes such a list should be comprehensive, correct, reliable and appropriate when you go through the list. If you some source learning maybe some magazine publications, secondary sources, like you collect some list, then it must be reliable. You have to check the authentication of that particular list. Then only you have to use it for your research study. Otherwise, it's going to be waste. So, யாரோ ஒரு பப்ளிஷ் பண்றதை நம்ம வச்சுட்டு யூஸ் பண்ணோம்னா then எல்லா ஸ்டடி கம்ப்ளீட் பண்ண பிறகு நம்ம பார்க்கும்போது your results, you won't get the correct results. Then you cannot rely on that. So when you get some source list, so you check the authentication of the list. Then after that only you have to use it. So it is extremely important for the source list to be the representative population as possible, and it should also act as the representative of the population. That is very important. So when you collect the source list, check the authentication. Next, coming to the size of the sample. So the size of the sample, how much you will take for your studies is very important. So if you want to study about the tribal community population, some study you are making, so what are their status, social status in the society, it is very important. So many tribals, you have lakhs and lakhs of people living included in that particular sample. But is it possible for you to go and study everyone? It is not at all possible. Actually, in qualitative research, so people go and sit with them in a particular village. 4 or 5 cases, they were, or 10 cases I'm taking, they will ask to depict how much difficulties they are facing, how they live. I know people, some researchers, some professors, they will go and spend time, at least 1-2 years, they will stay with those tribals, and they will completely, they will live with them, and then they will prepare their report. That is qualitative kind of research, but it actually what you speak they don't understand, isn't it? So also you are not you cannot understand the difficulties and what type of lifestyle they are living or how they are living, and you don't know, isn't it? You are not used to it. If you go and participate and you sit with them and observe, so what is the lifestyle, how their marriages are conducted, how what type of food they are eating, and how they celebrate their festivals, so that starting from that Kuladevam and all, so how they are working, what type of fears they have, forest dangers, what they have. Imaging their capital. Okay. So when they go and sit with them and observe, and they'll come out, definitely it will be the five, like 4 or 5 or 10 cases they will observe, they will interview them, and they will get their complete details, and they will give that case incidents. So with that, they will prepare the report. It will be very useful. There, the manipulation of data and all, it's not possible. So what enna பேசுறாங்களோ அப்படியே அப்படியே they will make it out. So that is the beautiful, or otherwise I will say that it will be an accurate one in some qualitative research. If you are sincerely put your efforts, definitely the information what you want to attain, you will get it. So the size of the sample. So the size of the sample, size of the sample, always keep it as optimum. It should not be neither excessively large, or it should not be less. So it is a major problem lies before the researcher. An optimum sample is one which fulfills the requirements of efficiency, reliability, and flexibility. And while deciding the size of the sample, the researcher has to determine an acceptable confidence level of the estimate. So there are so many calculations, so they've said to find out the how many samples you have to take and use. So always we keep it as 400 or 500, and we will make a study. So the size of the population variance need to be considered in case of larger variance, usually because higher sample is needed. So the variance you have to calculate and you have to identify. So there is a formulas are available to decide about the size of the sample. Next, parameters of interest. So the parameters of interest is nothing but you, while devising your sampling plan, so the specific population parameters has to be considered. So while interested in estimating the proportions of the persons with some characteristics in the population, or knowing some average or other measure concerning the population, so there might also be important subgroups about whom we would like to make estimates. So all this has to be a strong impact upon the sample design you would accept. So the small groups that you have to take that variance, you have to study the variance, average, and then you have to compare with the population characteristics, and then you have to go for that particular sample. You have to decide the sample. So that becomes the determinants. So the population estimates or the variance or the average you calculate becomes the determinants. So what kind of sample you can take. That is that you called as parameters of interest. And coming to the budget constraints. So it is nothing but the cost constraints, cost consideration. Whether it is affordable to go for the particular sample, or you can have the access to that particular area. So the cost consideration for practical have a major impact upon the decision on money for the particular sample. Next, sampling procedure. So it is nothing but the researcher must decide the type of sample he will use. and he must decide about the technique to be used in selecting the items of this.
You just share.
So as I already probability is going to non-probability. Probability what type of technique you are going to choose, and non-probability what kind of technique you choose. So that is what this sampling procedure says to us. Okay. So I hope that you have understood this visual. I'm moving to the next visual. So are you able to follow me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, characteristics of a good sample design. The characteristics of a good sample design is nothing but the first one is sample design must result in truly represent, as I already say, it must be a true representative of the sample, and it must be such which results in a sampling error, small error. So you'll accept you have taken the right sample. So if the error is very large, it deviates from the population, variance deviation you cannot say it is a representative of the population, isn't it? So sample design must be viable in the context of the funds available to research study. So some technique of the sampling consumes lot of money. So in that case, you have to choose the you have to think about the affordability, the money involved in that choosing that particular sampling technique. If the money involved is very high, so that available for the research study, isn't it? So some of the funding agency they will allot that particular on the ceiling amount, the minimum fund only. So with that minimum fund, whether it is you are affordable to do it, you have to decide and you have to use it. So everyone, some professors they will be more interested. They will go and live with the tribals and they will make all those things. They will study and some documentations also in if you watch. In some English channels. So they will give a lot of ideas about the this qualitative research. So Andaman tribals and all. So they are man eaters. So in that case, it is very dangerous to go and live with them and make a study. Some of the researchers they have killed also. So in that case, you have to think about. So whether going to Andaman or going to that particular area, it needs fund. So whether you are you are affordable or you have that minimum funds to meet those expenses. So you think that and then enter, you choose that particular sampling design. So sample design must be such that so that the systematic bias can be controlled in a better way. So for example, if you go for a census survey, over each and every unit of the item you are analyzing in that case. So the biased, there is a chance of bias entering into the system. So it has to be controlled. So as a human being, so you will be used to bias, isn't it? So you will have some what is that mindset. So this will be the conclusion. You will have some conclusion and you will be doing the things. In that case, then it is a possibility. There is a chance of having the bias in that particular system. So it has to be controlled in a better way. And sample should be such that results of sample studies can be applied in general for the universe with a reasonable level of confidence. So that level of confidence, 95%, 5%, all this level of confidence will be there. So the reasonable level of confidence must be there when you apply that sample study in general. So the table கொடுப்பாங்க அப்ப அந்த ஹை ஸ்கோர் டெஸ்ட்க்குலாம் நம்ம டேபிள் பார்ப்போம் அதுல லெவல் ஆஃப் கான்ஃபிடன்ஸ் இருக்கும் அது எந்த லெவல் அக்செப்டன்ஸ் 5% 95% 1% level of confidence that significance and all you will see and you will relate the things. Next, coming to the sampling frame. So sampling frame, relationship between the population, sampling frame and sample. Within this population, there will be probably be only certain groups that will be the interest to your study. This selected group is your sampling frame. So Tamil Nadu tribals means the total population, the Tamil Nadu population have to be included. Or Tamil Nadu எந்தெந்த ஊர்ல இருக்குறாங்க different districts you have to analyze different districts. Then the sampling frame will be different districts வந்துரும் sampling population பாருங்க total Tamil Nadu population, then coming to different district அதுல எந்த district you are going to focus. So that is the sampling research. So this is the different types of sampling design. So there are different types of sampling designs. That is the you can say the representation basis and the element selection technique. So how it represents or in the element selection technique, you can categorize the sample on two factors. So on the representation basis, the sample may be probability sampling. Each and every the unit of the population have the chance of represented in the sampling, or it may be non-probability sampling. So the probability sampling randomly will select, and I'll explain in detail about that. So the non-probability sampling means non-random sampling. So on element selection basis, the sample may be either unrestricted or restricted. So when each sample element is drawn individually from the population at large, then the sample so drawn is called the unrestricted sample. It is nothing but the sample element drawn individually from the population. Then it is called unrestricted. Whereas all other forms of sampling covered under the term restricted sampling. So the following chart. Now this chart is explaining about the different types of sampling designs. We have in this chart, so the basically two types of sampling. One is the probability and the non-probability. It is based on the representative basis. So you have the element selection technique. One is unrestricted, another one is restricted. So the unrestricted probability sampling you called as simple random sampling, and unrestricted you called as non-probability sampling, that happens on sampling or convenient sampling. And restricted element selection technique, restricted sampling, so you have that probability. So many other types of random probability sampling, that is the complex random sampling, that is called as cluster sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified sampling. Non-probability sampling, you have purposeless sampling, quota sampling, and judgment sampling. So I move to the next visual. So population can have the following characteristics. The characteristics homogeneous means, so all cases are simpler. So employees, if you have the employee in an organization, for example, if you take the employees are similar, they are homogeneous population. So employees of TCS. So the TCS, all employees, they are homogeneous in nature. But when you say employees, there are also different categories of employees. So some will be the technical employees, and another will be supportive staff. So there you can categorize that. You make stratas, and that is contain strata or layers. That is next. Stratified content later. So in homogeneous population, bottles of beer on a production line, Pepsi bottles, that becomes your homogeneous population. So stratified means people with different levels of income. That is what I'm saying. In an organization, employees means your homogeneous population, but you categorize them class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, different based on their income level. Then it is strata. You are making that particular strata as a homogeneous. You are applying, you make it as one characteristics, and you are trying to make the strata. And next, that is constraint strata of known proportions and percentage of different nationalities of students in a university. It is very easy, isn't it? So our university, for example, if you are NRIs as well as foreign students representation, then it is very easy for you to make the proportion stratification. How much percentage you are giving for that the quota they are giving for that foreign nationals. So you can identify very easily. Grouped by type. So contains distinctive groups of apartment buildings, towers, slabs, villas, tenement blocks, and grouped by location also. So different groups according to where they are. Animals in different desert, equatorial forest, and different areas of animals. So African elements or elephants are different from our country elephant. Sampling methods. Coming to the sampling methods. Simple random sampling, probability sampling, non-probability, as already said. Simple random sampling, stratified systematic sampling, cluster sampling, that non-probability, convenience, judgmental, snowball, and quota. So probability sampling techniques. When you come to the probability sampling, it is most reliable representation of the whole population. Probability sampling is, hello? It is otherwise called as random sampling or chance sampling. Actually, here every item of the universe has an equal chance of inclusion in the sample. So it is very simply said, over a group எல்லாருமே அது இன்க்ளூட் ஆகிறதுக்கு வாய்ப்பு. So you different methods you can represent to go for this probability sampling. Lottery method you can use, or the random numbers you can use for generate the samples. So always the random sampling methods from a finite refers to the method of sample selection which gives easy possible sample complex. If you have finite population, so it is very easy for you to apply this sampling method. Non-probability sampling techniques rely on the judgment of the researcher. So based on the researcher, convenience sampling. Suppose if you want to know about the